evening and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar, and today we're going to talk about the big labor conundrum. We have a strange situation in the country right now where we have thousands of workers, migrant workers, walking across the country trying to make their way back home after they have lost all employment during the lockdown. On the other hand, you have companies which are trying to restart but find themselves short of labor. There is also, of course, a humanitarian side to this, with governments trying to send workers back home. Today, we saw pictures and heart-rending news, really, of 16 workers who were killed in their sleep while they were sleeping on the tracks. They were walking all the way back home. This took place in Aurangabad. So what really is the full picture? What is the labor conundrum we find ourselves in? In the one hand, we have a workforce which now needs employment, found itself out of work, out of any kind of income, and is making its way back home. On the other hand, you have companies which want to start production but don't have labor. You also have states that want to encourage economic activity. Two states, in fact, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, have made radical changes to their labor law, and this too has struck off a huge debate.
In Uttar Pradesh, the Yogi Adityanath government has suspended all labour laws except 3 for the next 3 years. Over 30 labour laws have been suspended via an ordinance that includes firms getting exempted from inspections. Factory owners can now also hire and fire workers without facing any penal action. The ordinance, however, does not extend to the Bonded Labour Act, to the Building and Other Construction Workers Act, Payment of Wages Act, and the Workmen Compensation Act. Similarly, Madhya Pradesh too has announced a slew of measures. The state has allowed factories to have a 12-hour working day by paying for the extra 4 hours. Industries now have relief from departmental inspection, while no payment has to be made to the State Labour Welfare Board. The registering of new units has also been relaxed. Contractors will have to register only if the number of workers employed is 50 or above. Other states, including Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab and Himachal Pradesh, have relaxed their work-hour timings too. Maharashtra has allowed shops and factories to submit consolidated annual returns, while Kerala will issue new industrial licenses in a week. The relaxation of labour laws has seen its fair share of critics too, with activists and opposition parties saying that workers' rights are being overlooked. Industry, on the other hand, has been fighting for relaxation of archaic labour laws that they say neither protect workers nor allow enterprise to survive.
Joining me now to speak about India's big labour conundrum is Mr. R.C. Bhargava, Chairman of Maruti Suzuki, India's largest car maker. Mr. Bhargava, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to speak with you on such an important subject. Let me begin by getting your take. Most responses to the changes made by 2 states to their labor laws, and actually several states have made little changes over the last few days. Most of the responses to these changes have been extreme. They've either been excellent, this is great for industry, or the response has been, are we overlooking the needs and requirements and rights of labor? What is your take?
I believe what is happening now is a kind of reaction to what has happened because of the pandemic and the lockdown and the situation of migrant laborers. That is not the real issue for labor in India. I think it's a much more deeper and a long-term issue which we need to address. What's happening today is ultimately going to be a short-term problem which is going to be sorted out as it goes along. And to me, the greater interest lies in how we from here go and deal with our labor issues in general, in policy, in terms of the legal framework, in terms of the approach of management to labor, and how do we do that in a manner which leads to both improving the working conditions and the motivation of the workers, and at the same time increases competitiveness of industry.
Over the years, the common refrain that I have heard is that India's labor laws are very archaic. They are, not really tenable. And a lot of businesses pass around this or get a way out by hiring contract labor or getting temporary labor so that these laws don't actually have to apply. Some laws like written permission, if you want to fire even a single person, if you hire more than 100 people, these laws have long been a bone of contention. Is there relief that there is a movement towards suspending these laws, at least in some states?
I don't know about some states, but my issue is that the entire structure of management labor relations, the legal framework, the attitudes of governments, the bureaucracy, the unions, and the managements have all been based on certain historical situations which treated management and labor as adversaries. That the capitalist class will always exploit the labor class needed to be protected from the capitalist class, was the kind of fundamental approach which has prevailed even till now. Now, the point I want to raise is that this was happening when there was hardly any competition between industries. There was very little international trade. Today, the whole situation has changed drastically. And everybody recognizes that increasing competition is necessary in the interests of the consumer. Now, if increasing competition comes along, I believe it's essential, absolutely, in everybody's interest, including labor, that we review the whole basis of labor management decisions. If I may explain further, we need to look at what is going to be in the interests of labor in a competitive economy. Now, how does a labor worker ensure security of his employment? Only if the company continues to remain viable, grows, becomes prosperous. If the company goes bankrupt, there's no government today to bail out these companies and take them over and nationalize them. The company will wind up, go into bankruptcy. We have a bankruptcy code now, and the workers will lose their jobs. The worker, if he wants career prospect, can only happen in a growing company. It cannot happen in a shrinking company. If the quality of life of a worker is to improve, it can only happen if his employing company increases its ability to pay the worker better, to provide better facilities to the worker, and ensure a better quality of life. So essentially, the worker's future hinges absolutely, totally on the viability, growth, prosperity of his employing company. Now, that is something which is fundamental. It equally means that the employer will stand to benefit, his company will grow, his company will become more prosperous if all these conditions which help the labor are satisfied. Which means essentially that it's in the interest of both managements and labor that they work together to ensure the prosperity of the company, the growth of the company, the competitiveness of the company. But the worker will only do that if he sees that actually the management is going to fulfill what the worker expects in terms of better working conditions, better remuneration as the company prospers, better career prospects, and at least as importantly, respect to the worker and not treating him as somebody who is at a lower strata of society.
These are idealistic situations, but let's look back a little at what has happened. And I'm not talking about large companies like yours, Mr. Bhargava. I'm taking, a broader approach. Let's look back at what has happened since the lockdown and the conundrum we really find ourselves in across sizes of companies. The lockdown took place. A lot of businesses had to close their shutters, and many could not sustain paying labor throughout those many weeks. So people had to leave. Some have tried to leave. Now you have this movement of people. We don't know if they're going to come back. Now, as businesses start opening up, the situation is, will these people now leave? Should they be allowed to leave? Which, is a tricky question on all aspects. And those who have gone, will they have the trust to come back? Doesn't this display that somewhere or the other there is a flaw in the system which has created this situation?
Sure. The flaw is that the worker sees no link, no commitment to the company. Because the moment the difficulties arise for the company, like what's happened, or which can happen for other reasons also, the management's first reaction is to shed the working force. This time, the government came into the picture. They asked managements to continue to pay the workers. And so many companies tried to pay the workers. Some still, I think, didn't manage to do it. Now, one of the reasons for that is that all the companies have very weak balance sheets. Why do they have weak balance sheets? That's the issue which we should go into. Why is it that some companies are not in that position? They've retained their workers, they're able to pay them. And I think the answer goes back to what I was discussing earlier, that unless the companies focus on improving their competitiveness, their productivity, their internal resource generations, and the commitment of the workers towards the company, the worker must see that his future is linked to the company, that his benefits are linked to the growth of the company, and the management has to ensure that. Then these situations will not arise in the future. Today, I can quite see why the worker wants to go away, because he's not at all sure of his employment. How does he stay here if he's not getting paid?
And how will he come back? Tell me about this part of the entire equation, Mr. Bhargava.
Yeah, so
a lot of people I speak to say that even as they're beginning to start production, the availability of labor is becoming a serious issue. Do you see this driving up labor costs?
Labor costs are a second issue. First, you have to get the right kind of worker with the right kind of skills. Many companies in India today still feel that this use of migrant labor in the form of contract labor provided by contractors is the cheapest way to do business. That's cheap in the short term. It does not help the companies improve productivity, does not help them to become competitive. Quality doesn't improve because workers keep changing every few months or maybe in a year or so, and no skills are built up. So that system is what is leading to the present situation. The worker will come back if he finds that it's more profitable or it's in his interest to come back. If he finds that it's not in his interest to come back, he's not assured of a regular job here, but he's got something to do in his village, why would he come back?
So how will this move forward, Mr. Bhargav, with the changes that have been made? And many states might adopt this formula if they feel that this will help restarting business. Clearly, it's a need that has been expressed by industry that, take these sort of onerous labor laws off our back so that we can start again. The concerns are that in some cases it overlooks health and safety, conditions, ventilation, breaks for workers, etc. Very basic things. How do you see this then panning out? Do you see it as turning into a fair deal for both sides?
I think both managements as well as government have to relook at the way we've been conducting business. We cannot continue to create this adversarial relations between the two. Managements have now to realize that if they're going to sustain their business, if India is going to become competitive, and that's one of the issues which today we are grappling with. You don't get foreign direct investment coming into India. We've all been saying that the people leaving China should come to India. How many are coming into India? The bulk of them are going to other countries, like Vietnam attracts a lot. Even Bangladesh attracts. Myanmar attracts. India attracts very few people. And the reason is that we cannot get productive management going in India. And the labor is one of the most important resource for getting productive management.
Mr. Bhargav, since I have you here, let me get your take on what is happening in the auto sector. We've seen some dealerships open up. We've seen a lot of companies go the online route. Of course, production facilities have also opened up. It's sort of a wait and watch situation, yours including. Do you see the scope for pickup? What is the situation in terms of labor production capacity with Maruti right now?
It's going to be a slow process for various reasons. On the production side, there are a lot of constraints. All the vendors all over the country are not able to function. Some states who have vendors in red areas, not in containment zones, but in red areas, are not allowing those vendors to function. Now, one has to understand that in the automobile industry, you cannot assemble vehicles unless 100% of the components are available. 100% components means all vendors required for the components of a vehicle have to function. And therefore, if out of 1,000 vendors, 25 are not allowed to function in different parts of the country, the production line will come to a stop. And so the ability of manufacturers to ramp up production, I believe, is going to be quite slow. At the same time, the dealerships are going to run with limited manpower. They're trying to use more technology. There are limitations to customers coming into the dealership, partly because of being in red zones, in urban areas where there are limitations to people going out. So sales will also be small. Thirdly, and this is quite an important point for the industry, I believe the demand for cars is also going to remain low because of the affordability factor. The incomes of people have not grown in any manner in this last few months. As it is, the industry was in the doldrums in the whole of last year. So that demand factor is also going to come into play. So if you put production constraints, sale constraints, demand constraints, I don't see a rapid increase in the sale of automobiles in the country.
We've been at the Times Network talking about the India Revival Mission. It's a campaign that, we've been amplifying for the last several days, where we talk about how after 2 phases of lockdown and in the middle of the third one, we need to start looking at, jumpstarting the economy really and getting the wheels in motion. What would be your prescription, Mr. Bhargav, to get this moving on all sectors, and especially the auto sector?
I think we'll have to go about it in a very careful and safe manner of starting the economy. We have paid a price in these last 5-6 weeks. We should not let this go waste by suddenly trying to do things differently and opening the way for a resurgence of the virus. At the same time, we have to see that we don't place unnecessary obstacles in what is being started. Like I said, for the automobile industry, it's really not quite logical that there are 1,000 vendors willing to work, but 25 vendors in 3 states or 5 states are not allowed to work, even though they are, in terms of the Ministry of Home Affairs orders, allowed to work because they're not in containment zones. And if they follow the absolutely strict the prescription for safety which is given, and companies have provided protocols which are even stricter than what the government has done. So if safety precautions are all taken, I think industry should be allowed to function in a manner which they can actually function. I think the bureaucrats and the politicians need to understand the whole chain of activities which are required for any industry to function. It starts from the raw material end, goes up till the retailing end. That chain for every industry which is to start should be complete. If you break the chain anywhere, it will not work. But to complete it, you have to see that everywhere the strictest measures for safety are followed, so that even if that industry or that activity is in a red zone, it is still protected and does not lead to any spread of the virus.
Just a last take from you, Mr. Bhargav. do you think that India can truly afford a more extended period of this pause on full resumption of industrial activity? We're already seeing the economic impact of it coming down to jobs and pay cuts.
No, I think government itself has accepted that we cannot afford a full shutdown of industry. And that's why all these relaxations have been made, and I think they will continue to be made. But relaxation by government doesn't mean that the virus has gone away, doesn't mean that the danger of the virus spreading has disappeared. And it does require that while, as I said, the whole chain of activities should be functioning, everybody has to exercise a great deal of self restraint, self discipline, follow the safety rules, and make sure that working of industry, reviving the economy, is done in a manner which does not lead to the virus resurging anywhere in the country.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhargava, for speaking.
Thank you.